Welcome to the podcast Eternal, where we'll be reviewing biblical studies, theology, news of the day from a Christian point of view, and no politics. I'm your host, David Gear, former Assembly of God minister and author of the book Eternal and subsequent sequel, Resistance. Thank you for joining me. And I was told by these gentlemen who beat me up in Portland, by Gresham High School, that I needed to leave town or they were going to throw me off of what they called Suicide Bridge. So that's what I was going to do. They said, don't come back to the state or we'll kill you. So I left. That's what I did. Obviously, I wouldn't come back there. I wouldn't test it or stick around. I took the bus, and that bus only went to Vancouver. And from there, that's when I met someone at the homeless shelter there that would show me how you hop a train. And so I hopped my first train and went all the way to Pasco on that first train. It was weird getting used to. Usually I slept pretty soundly, and I started learning how to sleep soundly, roughing it, and at night and stuff, different places, dumpster diving, all that. That was all a reality too. Sniping, what we call sniping, when, if you had a smoke habit but you couldn't afford cigarettes, you would roll your own, but you would hit like government buildings and stuff like this. You would hit ashtrays where, places like that where they would take a couple puffs and then they'd put it in an ashtray. We called it sniping, and so you would empty, you wouldn't put your mouth on the cigarette, but you would empty the tobacco out of it, and you'd put it all in a plastic bag, and then there you go, you had smokes. If you didn't happen to have, you couldn't go canning and get money that way. So anyway, like I said, I was riding the rails, and I rode all the way up, caught a train in Pasco, stayed at the Pasco Union Gospel Mission there, and then from there I went to Kettle Falls. And from Kettle Falls, I actually shouldn't say Kettle Falls, I went to Spokane. And then one of the most terrifying nights of my life in Spokane, I caught a train that wasn't a grain car, and it wasn't a box car. There was nowhere to go, and the train was already moving. All I could do was climb to the top. So it was cold, it was raining, and I had to put one foot underneath a bar. There was one bar below me, and there was a bar on my left-hand side on top. And that's what I did through the night, nearly froze to death, and from Spokane to Kettle Falls, but I made it through the night. Very cold. That was probably the most terrifying night of my life, physically. Made it through Kettle Falls, and from there took a break, and then, because I was actually in shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and so I didn't think I was going to make it. From there, there was no more trains. After Kettle Falls, there's no more trains, so I actually crossed the border into Danville overnight, but I had to walk from Kettle Falls over the mountain. I was hitchhiking, but there was no cars. I didn't make it all the way walking. What happened is a pickup truck actually did come by, and I didn't have to walk the whole way, because I don't think I would have made it. As cold as it was, there's no way I would have made it. At that point, it had to be probably the middle of February or the end of February, still very cold. It wasn't too bad when I got to about during the day, the middle of the day, but when nighttime started to come, that's when I got worried. Luckily, got a ride before it got dark and dropped off at the Danville border crossing, and actually crossed over the border into Canada at night. So that's what happened there. Pretty crazy. And from there, I lived in, still homeless, lived in Canada for like 6 months, almost 6 months. It was from then until June when I would end up crossing. I stayed in Kelowna for a while, Grand Forks for a little bit, and Kelowna, and then from Kelowna hitchhiked my way down. So on the way from Kelowna, went across the border. I was skin and bones by that point. All I had was a backpack, and I think I had a muffin and maybe a banana or something in my bag. The Border Patrol guy, this was before 9/11, the Border Patrol guy actually offered me some money, asked me not to get alcohol with it, and that, figured I'd probably get cigarettes with it, but he said, get something to eat, and I'll always remember that, never forget that, because that was the last meal I had as a homeless person, pretty much, was at McDonald's in Oroville as I went there. I'd never been there before, and the carnival was there. As I was eating, some people from the carnival were down there eating, and they told me about how much you could make working for the carnival. So I joined the carnival. $344. You got extra $70, I think, if you help them set up and tear down. You got an extra $70. No bank account. They paid you in cash. This was great, and I could travel with them. Didn't stay with the carnival very long. I met somebody in Oroville, and if it had not been for her, after I left with the carnival to Omak, if it had not been for her, running into her again in Omak, her first name was April, if I remember right, I would never have come back to Oroville. And so little did I know that interaction there, I ended up, didn't know where to stay and where to go. And she was like, well, you can't stay here. And they told me about the shelter. There was a shelter downtown called the Shelter of Darkness. Or it's not of darkness, sorry. It's a shelter from darkness. And that it was a men's shelter in Oroville. So I was like, sweet, this is good. And that's kind of where everything really changed for me when I got into that shelter, and that was June 15th of 2000. It changed my life. Otherwise, today, had that not happened, I was probably 20 pounds, maybe less at that time. I'd either be dead now or in prison for doing something stupid. And that's, my life changed going to the shelter there. I stayed there for almost 3 years, actually joining the ministry. At first, I didn't know what to think. When I got there, I remember them saying, we provide you food and all this, and a place to stay. Our only requirement is that you come to church So the church there in Oroville was called the Full Gospel Country Church. And that's where, her name, I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I said her name now, but the patriarch of the family, she really cared about me. Her name was Dolly McAllister, and she changed my life, in many ways. If not for her, who knows? There was many times I was going to leave. I didn't want to stay there anymore. I was going to go back out on the street for whatever reason. At moments, thought I could, well, now I'm good, thought it was just a stop on the way to the next place where I was going to be, Before I went there, I genuinely thought I was going to spend the rest of my life on the street. I just thought that's what life is now, and I'm going to make the best of it. I saw no way of getting out from under that and free from meth and the addiction that was there. And but that's what happened. And I actually became part of the men's ministry there, and I stayed there for a long time. And then Master's Commission showed up in 2000 in the spring-ish. I would say it was actually closer to Easter. And, I was now following, I was clean, sober. I quit smoking. That was a tough one. My 21st birthday. So I showed up at the shelter June 15th of 2000. I was 19, right? And so it still took some time, Not everything happens all at once. We have this expectation of Christians that you say you're a Christian, you must be holier than thou, holier than who? I mean, that you go in and all of a sudden everything's changed and all of a sudden you're different. Well, it doesn't work like that. And it's not all just gonna just happen on its own. It's a little bit of effort from you too, like for me, I still had to work at it. I was still smoking for another, I got saved, but I still had things I needed to work out. The drugs were gone, but I still, I did. It was my birthday, actually, and I think it was the 6th time I had tried to quit. And it was just then that I just knew. We were having like a little campfire thing outside they were having for me, and I just knew, like, this is it. This is the time I'm gonna quit smoking. I don't want to smoke anymore. It's killing my lungs. I've been smoking for a long time, and I thought, okay. And that was it. I was down to like one smoke, I think, a day, and I thought, what am I doing? I got it gradually down, and I'm like, I don't need this one cigarette a day. I can quit. And so that was it, my 21st birthday. When most people in the world are having their first drink, I was quitting everything, except coffee. I still liked my coffee. Of course, I still do, even now. But yeah, that's from there. Master's Commission came, and that was the next chapter in 2003. I think that's probably, they showed up. They did a 3-day revival, and they came in from Marysville. So this is Marysville Master's Commission. If you don't know about Master's Commission, some people do. I don't know if that's still a thing or not. I hear rumors that there's still a couple of those around going. This was the most well-known one, I'd say, in Washington. And they would go around 3 days, 2 weekends a month, 2 3-day weekends a month, and they would go to different struggling churches. And these were young people. This was a discipleship school. It would raise people up, train them by actually doing the ministry the same way that the same way that the apostles did. They they were raised up and said, okay, follow me. And after they followed him for a while, as the disciples did, then he was like, okay, now you go out. I've taught you, I've told you. And, and he sent them out with the confidence in saying, you can do just the same things that I'm doing. And down the road, he said, and even greater things than this. And you're talking about healing people and raising the dead and casting out demons. So that's really the mold for what Master's Commission was. It was people who felt the call, knew that they were called to do something more, to reach out. That's what they did. They answered that call. They dropped everything they were doing, and you can see the correlation there. They dropped everything, sold everything. I sold everything I had. I sold my car, my first car. Dolly McAllister had taught me how to drive. She even used her husband's car to teach me. Her husband had passed away, and she taught me how to drive. I was really late to learning how to drive. And then, when that was all done, she even sold that car, one of the last big possessions that her husband had. I believe it's a Chevy Celebrity, if some of you might know what that is. And that money went towards my tuition, and without those people's help, which I am still absolutely grateful for, even to this day, they really just, gave me that start that I needed. Without their help, I would have never been able to pay my tuition at Master's Commission. But as I said before, you could see the correlation. Pastor Keith Kippen, which I'm sure he wouldn't mind me mentioning his name. He was my mentor. He was the head of Marysville Master's Commission at Marysville First Assembly. He would train us up, not just Pastor Keith, but also the other pastors of the church there. We would work underneath those pastors, and we would get trained. We had schooling, satellite schooling from the Assembly of God Church, so that we could learn and get our licensing and become licensed ministers and pastors, and maybe even someday go on to ordination or wherever it was we were called to, even if that was the mission field. And that's what would happen for me. We would go around. I joined them. I joined Master's Commission after they came. When they came to our church in 2003, in that spring, myself, my roommate Aaron Willis, and another friend of mine, Brandon, we all actually got baptized at the same time. So a lot of people are confused about that, non-believers, and maybe even some believers in other denominations, maybe Catholics or otherwise. Sometimes they're confused about that. My own mother said that one time. She goes, well, you were already baptized. I baptized you when you were a kid, when you were a baby. And so dedication is different from baptism. So when you're dedicated, you're not being baptized, you're being dedicated. So as a youth, if your parents take you there, dedication is them saying that we make a commitment to our child that we will raise them in the way we will raise them to be Christians. And so that's what was done for me as a baby, and my brothers too, I believe. But to be baptized, that's a choice you make, and that's when you've made the decision. Now, I'd been a Christian all that time and never been baptized, so I'm thinking, well, I originally got saved in high school, but I didn't realize I'd never gone and gotten baptized. So Pastor Keith Kippen baptized me and my roommates, which was pretty cool at the time. That's something I'll never forget. It was in Deep Bay Park in Oroville, for those who might know where that is. And it was just an awesome moment I'll never forget. And so from there, that September, we joined Master's Commission. We paid the fee, and we went out and we started preaching. And then at the end of every year, we went and did VBS, and we did missionary trips through Sun City to Mexico. So we went to Ensenada every year. I was in Master's Commission there for 2 years, and some others went on to do another year. And so from there, while I was in Master's Commission, I had started having dreams again about Ireland, but not just Ireland. I had gotten a dream when I was in high school for the book Eternal. And so that book is, like I said, launched all of what I'm doing now. It took 20 years, so from the first time I started having those dreams, and I even had the title back then, I didn't start writing the book Eternal until 2006. So that's 10 years. But a lot of other things obviously were going on. We were doing ministry, and we were going to churches, and our lives were being changed, transformed, and I was still finally, I think, starting to, what I felt is a healing was taking place while I was doing ministry. Although I didn't realize that I was at that time equating ministry to how well I was doing in my relationship with God, and I didn't realize that I was slowly moving away from actually having a daily walk, relationship, commitment, prayer life, all that. It was always geared towards other people. It was always geared towards, praying for other people, or doing ministry, or music, playing music, practicing. It was always, all of a sudden, my Christian identity, I didn't know, was turning into a ministry one, a one of works, as getting closer, and did not know that would become a problem. I mean, I was unaware of it, but it was, so as long as I was involved, I was doing okay. But I had 19 years of trauma and situations and things that happened that I hadn't handed over to God to heal me from, or to move on from, in a way. I didn't realize that was still there as well. And so for me, I was using the ministry as an escape from those things. And so I just delved myself in 110% into the ministry. Now, not that was all bad. I saw a lot of awesome things. Was involved in seeing a lot of things, uh, and that time changed my life. I wouldn't take it back for anything. This has been another episode of the Eternal Podcast, and we thank you for your listening and support. Don't forget, you can pick up your very own copy of Eternal by David Gear at Amazon.com, as well as other merchandise, sweatshirts, hoodies, zip-up hoodies, and t-shirts as well at Amazon.com.